former Governor Larry Hogan shot this video last night. These lights over his hometown in Davidsonville, just 25 miles from the nation's capital, as he pointed out. And then there's this.
I've never seen them. Wow, they just passed each other. Yeah, I've never seen them before.
New Jersey Senator Andy Kim shared this video of drones he shot yesterday. Federal authorities insist most of these sightings are actually legally manned aircraft. But Senator Kim says he checked a flight tracker app while capturing this video and that the devices he was capturing were not on it. The sightings are happening near LaGuardia Airport, too. Officials say they received unconfirmed reports of drone activity over that busy airport. As for numbers, the FBI says it's received more than 3,000 tips from the public about drone sightings going back to November 18th, all over New Jersey. Since then, there's been an average of 92 sightings per night and expanding across half a dozen states. In a joint statement, the FBI and Department of Homeland Security said, quote, "We have no evidence at this time that the reported drone sightings pose a national security or public safety threat, or that they have a foreign nexus." Lawmakers, however, aren't buying it and are pushing for answers and action. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and 2 other senators wrote a letter calling for a briefing with the FBI and Homeland Security. Well, in Connecticut, Senator Richard Blumenthal says the devices should be shot down if they can't be identified. And we've learned that House Speaker Mike Johnson did get a federal briefing on the sightings, as have Senate staffers in a few select offices. But other than that, there's been very little transparency. So what's going on? Is this some contagious mass hysteria? Or are people really seeing something that our government cannot identify? Our own Rich McHugh went out drone hunting in New Jersey. He did not come back empty-handed. Rich, tell us what you saw.
Hi, Elizabeth. Well, I got to be honest here. You know, when this story first came out a few weeks ago, as a resident of New Jersey, as a journalist, I didn't pay it much credence. I thought it would turn out to be a bunch of pranksters and this would all be over by now. The experience I had last night, however, changed the way I feel about this story completely. What I saw was more sophisticated than I ever imagined. Take a look.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, at least 5 lights, 6 lights.
I didn't believe what I was seeing. But what was I seeing? We're here in central Jersey. We've been looking for the past hour. I think we've seen about 40 or 50 of these drones. In fact, there's one over my shoulder right there. One after another, these drones appeared in the night sky. If you look real close, they look like fixed-wing aircraft, about 8 to 10 feet wide, colorful, white blinking lights.
That is not a plane.
Definitely not an airplane, but what was it? Hours earlier, I was invited to join the Ocean County Sheriff Department. They launched their own drones to see if they could intercept the mysterious aircraft New Jersey residents have been reporting in recent weeks. The department says these mystery drones evade detection because they don't give off heat like regular drones. Why do you think that is?
We don't know. It's just something that we haven't, it's not something that we've had our hands on. It's not something that we've experienced.
Something they hadn't experienced until now. One of their officers called 911 after seeing 50 of them come off the ocean.
Advised after we made contact with that officer that there were 50 that came off the ocean.
50?
50. That was my reaction also. There were 50 that were coming off the ocean.
And this is a sworn officer?
A sworn officer, yes. We contacted state police, we contacted the FBI, we contacted the Coast Guard, at which point the Coast Guard went out with their boat and they reported seeing 13 following their boat. And then the Coast Guard also advised that they went over them about 300 feet and had a wingspan of about 8 feet.
I see one right here. Did I see the same thing that officer saw? I'm still not sure. What I can show you is this video. What I can tell you is I've never seen anything like it before. Wow. In more than a month since these reports started, the federal government doesn't know what they are either.
What's your message to the White House?
My message is come to the Jersey Shore. I know it's wintertime, but come see what we see, and then, maybe have a better appreciation for why our residents are concerned.
You know, the Ocean County Sheriff, that drone unit, they have an industrial grade drone. They put it up. They were tracking one of these drones, Elizabeth, and they said this thing easily evaded them, disappeared out of thin air. So, you know, to me, it's, if this is not our military, then it's even more scary, and we need answers, frankly.
All right, Rich McHugh, investigative journalist and co-host of the Weaponized podcast, Jeremy Corbell, is the one who released that video. And today he dropped yet another image of a separate UFO sighting. It's being called the Chandelier UFO because of its shape. A new documentary series hosted by Corbell shows the moment he speaks to an unidentified U.S. intelligence official about this puzzling image.
So what was the most impressive thing to you about this video, which the world has not seen yet?
The fact that it makes no sense. It is just the most bizarre structure with no purpose and with speed that has everyone across the intelligence community just asking questions and trying to figure out what this thing is. There is no wings. There's seemingly no place for anyone to sit on. It's just a bizarre shape.
All right, we have the picture of the Chandelier UFO, as it's being called, but where's the video? Let's bring in investigative journalist Jeremy Corbell to find out. So what's the answer? Where's the video, Jeremy?
Yeah, that's part of the story, and I think I'm going to have to answer that at another time. But I will say this, is that there is more footage. That is a fact. So some people got to see portions of it within the intelligence community, and I'm so happy that people are coming forward. That's kind of the point of why you put some of this stuff out. There is a bigger story to tell. The object did go into the water for 17 minutes, and then it did come out and shoot off at an extraordinary speed.
Wait, are you talking about the jellyfish UFO or the Chandelier UFO?
Right. So let's separate the two for your audience.
Yeah.
So what we are calling the jellyfish UFO is a strange morphology. I mean, it looks like a jellyfish, and because it went in the water, we dubbed it that. Some people called it the spaghetti monster, and that's awesome. But the other one, the chandelier, it's because if you look at it from the bottom, it looks like a chandelier. They're two separate events, military filmed footage of designated UAP by our intelligence agencies. So I'm talking about the jellyfish UFO is the one that actually showed transmedium capability. It did go into the water for 17 minutes, did come up and shoot off at an extraordinary speed.
When you say these videos were made by the military, made by what kinds of cameras, on what kinds of equipment?
Yeah, it was actually called the MX-20 was the actual system, but we have surveillance platforms to protect bases. So this is the first time in history we are seeing a designated UAP, an unknown and unidentified, that it is moving into a restricted base. It is an incursion, in fact. So this is the first time you're seeing that. We've heard about this, how UFOs will come in, they'll turn on or shut down nuclear weapons in Russia and China. Well, this is the first time you're seeing footage of an incursion of a designated UAP by our intelligence agencies.
But when you say, I mean, you know, when we say designated UAP, that it has been designated a UAP by our intelligence agencies, that doesn't mean it's alien life. It just means we don't know what it is, right?
Oh, correct. Yeah, we don't know what it is. It's unidentified, which is very dangerous. To have something that you don't know its capability or intent, that is a big deal. So UAPs in general, I don't even know where they're from, who's controlling them, but the fact that they can outpace, outmaneuver, and outperform anything we have, that is an issue.
Yeah, they're doing something that we don't have the technology to do, and we have supposedly the most sophisticated military on Earth right now.
It's a problem.
Okay. The intelligence analyst that you interviewed in the documentary about the Chandelier video said that UFO, quote, made no sense. What was he talking about, and what else is unusual about that one?
Right. So to answer your first question, why is it an image and not a video? Because as a journalist, I can obtain and release certain things that do not have a problem with national security. It doesn't jeopardize our national security. So sometimes when I obtain things, I can create and put out a still image from a video. But there are sensitive things about releasing military film footage, especially incursions in military bases. So the Chandelier one, you're seeing an image like the Mosul Orb, which is another military filmed UAP that I put out with George Knapp, my mentor in journalism, right? So this is just another image. Now, I hope the full video of the Chandelier UAP does come out. We're even having pressure from inside of government to get answers from the Inspector General of the intelligence community. But as a journalist, I can put this out in good conscience and say, This is what's going on. Now, why it was unique? Well, the heat signature is unlike anything I've ever seen before, but also the people that have seen the full videos within the intelligence community, they report to me that there's no flight control surfaces. They don't know how this thing was maneuvering the way it was and just kind of rotating. It is an unknown. It's not U.S. capable. We don't know whose it is, and that is a problem.
There's mounting frustration over the government's lack of answers on the mysterious drones flying over the East Coast right now. Lawmakers spent this week combing through what little is really known about them right now. The Pentagon saying they're not ours. FBI and Homeland Security say they don't appear foreign or from an enemy. And there's been no threat to the public. Joining me now is NewsNation special correspondent Ross Coulthart. Ross, good morning to you. It's like no matter what way you slice it, we got a problem, right? If it's Russia or Iran behind it, there's a problem. If we simply don't know who it is, that's a problem.
Well, good morning, firstly, and can I say, let's hope it's aliens, because if it's Russia or China, we have a very serious problem. And this is the issue. The government has now admitted that we are of the view that it's not a foreign adversary government, a foreign adversary of any kind, and moreover, it's not US technology, US government technology or US military technology, which doesn't leave very much. All it leaves is the possibility of some dissident rogue group in government or maybe some private contractor that's doing the wrong thing. It really does put us in an extraordinary position, because what's happening at the moment, Marky, is I'm being besieged with angry people from places not just New Jersey, but all over the United States, who are telling me that they're really angry that the White House has suggested that this is a misidentification. Unfortunately, yesterday, Admiral John Kirby, the national security spokesman, pushed the line that people in New Jersey particularly are misidentifying manned aircraft all the time for these drones and suggesting that there's something anomalous about them. And people in New Jersey are very angry because they've seen these things for themselves. They know they're not normal drones. They're seeing them do increasingly weird things. They want answers, and they don't like being gaslit by the White House.
Yeah, and there were just sightings in California, right, Temecula. So this is now no longer just a New Jersey East Coast problem, Ross.
It never has been, and again, there's been some very clever spin on this, but this has been an event that's been happening all over the world, Marky. It started a few weeks ago in England, over 2 major RAF bases, Royal Air Force bases in England, but I'm getting reports from here in Australia, where I am, China, Russia, parts of Europe. There are sightings happening all over the world of extraordinary so-called drones or objects that appear to look like drones. And incredibly, the government here cannot give us any answers. They seem unable to provide a simple explanation for what these objects are.
And do you believe
them? People are now starting to get concerned.
Do you believe them when they say we don't know? It's like, how can you tell us that we're safe? It's not a foreign adversary behind the controls of these things when you're also at the exact same moment unable to give us any more to chew on or work with.
Exactly. How can they possibly make any kind of assertion that it's safe, that there's no national security threat, there's no public safety threat, and that it's not a foreign adversary? They must know something more. And I think a lot of people are getting angry that the government's not being fully transparent about what it knows. They want answers. And so do people in Congress. Senators, congressmen, they're now starting to really rattle the cage. And as we all know, folk from New Jersey aren't reticent in saying what they think.
Yeah, exactly. I'm surprised more people aren't just, taking them out themselves in their own backyards, Ross. I know that's been floated out by some senators, too. Lastly, before I let you go, you're going to be hosting the special for us this weekend, right? What you got cooking, and who can we expect to hear from?
We've got quite a major investigation into this whole saga. We've got local politicians, we've got interviews with experts, technical experts on the ground, and we're taking you on the ground for the latest information on what's behind these mystery drones.
Well, we cannot wait to watch. You're going to have eyeballs from all over the world on that special. No pressure. Ross Coulthart, thank you so much. Happy Friday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
There is still a lot of mystery surrounding the drone sightings across the skies of the Northeast. Just after the new year, officials say an airport in West Hampton, New York, saw repeated drone sightings, including right over the runways. So they took steps to do something about it. And this comes after President-elect Trump last month vowed to release a full report on the sightings once he takes office Monday.
I'm going to give you a report on drones about 1 day into the administration, because I think it's ridiculous that they're not telling you about what's going on with the drones.
All right, senior correspondent Laura Ingalls live for us in New York. So, Laura, what more do we know about these so-called drone detection systems?
Hey, Nicole. Well, we are standing right outside the Francis Gorbeski Airport. We're in Suffolk County on New York's Long Island and West Hampton. And this is where officials have been reporting a very unusual amount of sightings around this airport. Our photographer, Greg, is going to push in and show you the control tower because that is where some of these calls have been dealt with. As we take a look at this airport, these incidents have occurred in highly sensitive areas, including over runways here, on taxiways and restricted airspace. And just this month, authorities have reported multiple sightings that have raised serious questions about who might be behind these flights and what the purpose may be. And to address the issue, a highly sophisticated system known as D-Drone has been installed here. The system uses radar, cameras, and artificial intelligence to track and pinpoint drones in real time. And officials here tell us it is a crucial tool for them for this airport, which is also home to the 106th Rescue Wing of the New York Air National Guard, making these sightings all the more concerning. And adding to the growing attention, as you mentioned there at the top, President-elect Donald Trump recently addressed the issue, vowing to make these incidents a priority once he takes office. And locally, officials in Suffolk County are leveraging the new detection system to trace the origins of these drones and identify. Take a listen.
That detection system will allow us to help identify not only where these are taking off from, but also the IDs that are associated with these drones. And we're going to use that information to potentially go and knock on doors or locate the actual operator and have a conversation as to what they're doing.
As I mentioned, the Air National Guard is here next door, and what we've been told from some of these, quote, drones that have been spotted in the sky, when you think about drones that we are used to seeing, the officials here have said, just like we've heard before, Nicole, that some of these items have been the size of cars. They are very large. There was many spotted in the last few days, and on Christmas Day, 17 different sightings at this airport. Nicole?
Yeah, so a lot of questions, Laura. Next hour, we'll hear more from you, including some exclusive new video. So Laura Ingalls reporting live for us. Thank you.
We have Representative Anna Paulina Luna. She is on the House Oversight Committee, which held hearings on UFOs and UAPs, and to be honest, one of the few who took this seriously early. We have Christopher Mellon, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, who specializes in unidentified flying objects, and Ryan Graves, former Navy pilot turned UFO whistleblower. Thank you to each and all. And just quickly, does anybody believe that I have it wrong and that this is some great mystery that nobody knows any of the answers to? All right, good. I'll start with you, Representative. How do you explain how you keep hearing that there are divisions of government that are involved in different types of undertakings, but they can't come clean, even with members of Congress, even with a special subcommittee, about what is in the air over New Jersey and elsewhere?
Look, it's unacceptable, and for them to undermine Representative Andrews' credibility in saying that he's talking to people that he does believe that these are drones from other nefarious foreign actors. I mean, it just goes to show, A, obviously they're checked out before the holidays and they know that they're leaving office, and so I believe that they're not really interested in finding out what's happening. And it's the unfortunate truth of what happens in Washington, especially when there's a new incoming administration. But to be clear, you know, what we're seeing right now happening, not just in the drone sphere, but I think on the topic of UAPs, is you're right, there has been a change in technology. And also with the fact that people can now record, you have devices, they can't really hide it anymore. So I think the Pentagon And the government as a whole is looking at how to address this to the American people. But there's no doubt in my mind that Representative Andrew was telling the truth. It's very likely that these are drones from foreign adversary. And if you don't believe that the U.S. government would cover something up, just look at how they responded with the Chinese spy balloon.
No, that's a good point. And look, you know this. You're in Florida. Mellon knows this. Graves knows this. A lot of these drones, like the ones we're showing right now, you see navigation lights on them. You see a red and a green. You know this from boating and down, so they have the same things. Aircraft are the same thing that boats do. They have a red and a green. So it's not like they're from some outer atmosphere. Let me start with you, Mr. Mellon. Do you believe that there are more and that it's understood and explainable?
I believe there are more. I think it's important for people to understand that this has been going on since at least 2017. Which is to say these smaller, brightly lit, drone-like vehicles violating restricted U.S. military airspace in sensitive areas around nuclear power facilities, nuclear weapons storage facilities. A year ago today, roughly, Langley Air Force Base was taken offline by drones. And that continued that was exactly a year ago this month. And that was about a year after there was a similar sort of pattern in the western United States for several months near some of our ICBM fields. So it's troubling that after all this time, we still haven't captured any of these things. We still haven't brought them down. We still know where they're coming from. We are really in a position of ignorance here, and hopefully this will maybe at long last, after all these prior events and the Chinese balloon, get some people to take a hard look at what do we need to do to get our hands on one of these things so we can get to the bottom of this.
Right. I mean, look, Chris, you know better than I do, but I don't know that they haven't gotten any of them. I would read it another way, just as somebody who's been in the business of deception detection for 25 years, that, that calmness of them being not concerned about it is usually a function of having information. And Ryan, you and I have talked many times about how many stories you've heard about what they did take down or what they found on the ground, and programs that use a lot of money to use special operators to go and recover these things. But SUV-sized drones, I can't find those on the commercial market. I've been looking for days. How do you explain that part? You think people just get the size wrong, Ryan?
Well, there always is some uncertainty when it comes to judging a moving object in the sky, especially at night and especially as a single source of light. But these things appear to be close enough to the ground where I think I have pretty high confidence in the size predictions that they're estimating, give or take 20%. But, these sizes and these types of behaviors are something that we've seen and we've talked about, Chris, over the years, starting at Virginia Beach, working its way further north into the Langley area, and perhaps now into New Jersey. I don't think we can conclusively say that they're inherently linked necessarily, but with the mixed messages that we're getting between the legislative branch and between the executive branch, it really feels like the Biden administration is gaslighting us on the seriousness of this issue.
All right, it may be the summer of Roswell in New Mexico, but for people who track unexplained sightings and reports of mysterious visitors, it was definitely the spring of Las Vegas. Remember, it was the last night of April when a family in Vegas called police after seeing and hearing a crash and described what they called very tall, shiny non-humans. A police body camera captured a streak of light across the sky that night. But that and the family's account of what happened are the only things in the evidence column for Vegas sighting 2023. There wasn't much more. I want to bring in James Fox. He's a longtime UFO investigator and producer of two highly regarded films on the subject, The Phenomenon and Moment of Contact. James, thanks for being with us. First of all, what do you make of the Vegas incident? It was reported on quite a bit. Police initially said it wasn't a hoax in terms of the 911 call, but we haven't really seen a lot of other evidence come out of it.
I initially was rather excited about it, but as I dug a little deeper, I found the gentleman's testimony of the beings and the big mouths and super tall, and then the imprints in the backyard to me looked like a little scuff mark with someone's shoe. Wasn't particularly impressive. You hear the impact site, the alleged impact site, and it's fairly significant. If something did in fact hit the ground, it would have left a lot more than just a little circular scuff mark. And the fact that I got directly in touch with George Knapp, who's been reporting on UFOs in Las Vegas for decades, and he said that he had made a number of attempts to speak directly with the family They initially had agreed, and then they never answered their door on 3 different occasions.
Yeah, I think the
same
thing sort of happened with the media, I think, in terms of trying to talk with them quite a bit. I want to go through, though, because there's been so many videos and photos over the years, especially it seems like lately, a lot of it gets debunked. I want to go through sort of the top 3 photos that seem the most credible. I know the first one is from McMinnville, Oregon from 1950. Just kind of walk me through these photos and what makes them so credible in your eyes.
So a lot of people say there's just a lack of, I just heard Michael Shermer, the skeptic, say it's always a friend of a friend who saw something, or the friend saw something, and it's anecdotal. But, you know, dating back to the late 40s and early 50s, case in point, McMinnville, Oregon, in 1950, 2 witnesses, Evelyn and her husband, Paul Trent, saw this disc-shaped object hovering over their garden. And Paul grabbed his camera and snapped off 2 or 3 really good shots. Those photographs have been analyzed to death, including part of Project Condon and Blue Book, and there was never a determination that they were bogus. They were authentic, broad daylight, points of reference, multiple eyewitness photographs of what appears to be a disc.
Those look clear. I don't want to rush you, but we only have about a minute left, so I want to get to the other photos. Tell me about 1965 Santa Ana, California.
It was a highway worker by the name of Rex Heflin. He was identifying potential hazards in the road. He had a camera with him, a Polaroid camera, and he snapped off 3 or 4 shots of a disc-shaped craft. Those 2 have never been debunked. He maintained his story till his death, and they're very good broad daylight points of reference, again, photographs.
And what about 1990, the photo from Scotland?
So those photographs I heard about in the late 90s. I interviewed Nick Pope, who investigated UFOs in an official capacity for the Ministry of Defense. And I said, what were some of the best cases? And without hesitation, he went to this case that took place in Scotland. But there were 2 witnesses. They took 6 photographs. The object was hovering stationary in the sky for some period of time before a Harrier jet went round it. And then when it took off vertically at a tremendous high rate of speed, according to the witnesses. And there were 6 photographs taken. The MOD took over the investigation. The 2 witnesses wanted the case publicized, but the MOD took over, confiscated the original photographs, confiscated the original negatives, and this never saw the light of day until just recently. David Clark, seen in that photograph here, did an extensive amount of research, found this guy who was part of the RAF, Craig Lindsay, and he had kept 1 print, and that's an original print.
Interesting.
One of the photographs.
You almost have to wonder sometimes if the older photos are in some ways more credible because it was like before technology had advanced and you could get in your computer and Photoshop and that kind of a thing. So interesting to see those 3 photos specifically. James Fox, thank you so much for breaking it all down for us. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on.
There was a really strong light. It lit up the entire cab of my cruiser, to the point where I was having a hard time driving because I really couldn't see it. I was blinded by it. It was a perfect sphere, and it almost looked like plasma moving constantly. And I was perplexed and confused at what I was looking at.
That is veteran Connecticut police officer Robert Klein describing what he says was a close encounter with a UFO. Take a look at this video. This is a reenactment of what Officer Klein says he saw back in April of 2022, taken from his description. He says he was barely into his overnight shift on a stretch of dark road that runs along a lake when his patrol car was filled with bright light that emanated from an object that was hovering near his car. The light changed colors several times, and then it zipped over the lake in the blink of an eye. Here to talk to us more about this alleged UFO sighting is NewsNation special correspondent and investigative journalist Ross Coulthart. Ross, it's always good to see you. I want to get your immediate thoughts on this account from Officer Klein.
G'day, Natasha. Well, it's exciting because it looks like, when you see that fantastic reenactment that NewsNation's done, it looks like something out of Close Encounters of the Third Kind. You see the cabin of his cruiser filling up with light, and then when he's got his faculties back, he looks out the window, and as he describes, it's this gigantic, pulsing, multicoloured orb. And it's It's quite extraordinary, but the thing I find fantastic is that an officer with the experience, 25 years experience of Robert Klein, showed the presence of mind and indeed the courage to feel okay about coming forward and talking about it publicly. I think that's the most significant and important thing because, frankly, these sightings are happening all the time. There's a huge intensity of sightings right now, many of them orange plasma balls like he described, and where he is very close to one of the most important UFO sightings areas in US history, which is the Hudson Valley, where there was an enormous number of sightings 20 to 30 years ago.
I appreciate that context. And when it comes to Officer Klein's account, what would you say to anyone who is skeptical because he waited 2 years to come forward with this testimony?
Well, how do you deal with skeptics, Natasha? I mean, ultimately, they're just going to always say it can't possibly be, therefore it isn't. There's a kind of a denialism in the face of overwhelming evidence. A lot of people say witness evidence isn't evidence. I don't agree. Witness evidence is evidence. We convict people based on witness evidence in our courts. It's very important evidence. And in this case, we have a very senior police officer, a man of high credit, who's worked for his community for 25 years. Why would he expose himself to public vilification and ridicule, or at least the risk thereof, by speaking about UFOs? All credit to him for showing the bravery about coming forward. I think we're moving beyond the period where these things get treated with default ridicule and contempt. I think the public are a lot wiser than we give them credit for. They can smell a rat when they see one, and I freely speak about the fact that I think the US government knows a lot more than it's revealing about what these objects are.
And for the sake of playing devil's advocate, do you think there are any immediate Earth origin explanations that come to mind for what he saw?
Okay, let's try that. It could be, say, a flare. The trouble is that what he described was instantaneous movement. He describes 1 minute it's over his patrol car, and the next minute, as he films with his video camera, it's zoomed instantaneously across the lake. Flares don't do that. Neither do aeroplanes, helicopters, or any other type of prosaic explanation. Could it be a meteor? Could it be a comet? Could it be a satellite? No. So all of the prosaic explanations that you'd normally look for to try and explain something like this, and you should, because quite often it's important to be skeptical. Quite often we do mistake things that are prosaic for abnormal or anomalous objects. And I think that the simple fact is, in this case, there is no explanation.
Have you ever seen this level of reports on social media before of people describing these witness firsthand accounts? And are they notably clustered in specific areas?
Natasha, the sightings at the moment are off the charts. I've been talking to people from MUFON, and they're telling me that reports not only in the US over sensitive US military facilities, particularly facilities with nuclear weapons or nuclear power, but also over the United Kingdom, there are spates of what the US Air Force is continuing to describe as drone sightings over some of the most sensitive RAF, Royal Air Force bases in the United Kingdom. And we know, apocryphally, that they are bases where nuclear weapons are allegedly located, and they are shared with the US Air Force. It's an issue of grave concern. In fact, it should be a national security concern that right now, over sensitive military facilities across the United States, as we've reported before, I think I've spoken to you about sightings over the Langley Air Force Base in Virginia. We're now seeing those over the continental USA and across Europe, particularly in the United Kingdom. Sightings are off the charts. I've never had so many reports coming in. And a lot of them, intriguingly, Natasha, are orbs, plasma orbs with this distinctive orange-red colour that Officer Klein saw that evening in 2022.
New reports are revealing more about the possible presence of UFOs, not just in the United States, but we're talking about around the world, amid last week's historic Capitol Hill testimony. 3 whistleblowers talking to lawmakers. In Mexico, The Sun is now reporting people seeing a mysterious flying disc-shaped object with a bright halo in the night sky. All of this as we await a report on UFOs from NASA. We expect that to come out sometime this month. Joining us now from London is the founder and editor-in-chief of the Liberation Times and senior contributing journalist at the Daily Mail, Christopher Sharp. Chris, thanks for being with us. So the White House seems to be criticizing those who are going against these possible sightings and the possibility. Does this indicate a significant shift from federal authorities here in the States on this?
Yes, there is a real shift occurring now. The White House realizes that this is a real thing. After the February shootdowns over Alaska and other states, they set up an interagency team led by Jake Sullivan. And my sources already also told me that the recent Chuck Schumer amendment proposed for the National Defense Authorization Act was done in coordination with the White House, and that included language of basically repossessing craft in private hands, which were of unknown origin or non-human origin. So, yeah, this is getting real pretty quickly.
Yeah, picking up a lot of momentum. Senator Schumer wants to declassify documents related to UFOs, one of the efforts. Your reporting also confirmed, Christopher, that multiple Tic Tac UFOs were tracked around that same time in 2004 that one of the witnesses testified about. Tell me more about what you have uncovered.
Correct, yes. So we were able to break news that sensor platforms had tracked UAP above 80,000 feet in that incident, in that series of events, before we had known that the maximum of the Spy 1 radar that picks it up from the USS Princeton had tracked them at their maximum tracking height of 80,000 feet. So actually having confirmation that, one, they were tracked by other sensors, and two, that they were tracked above 80,000 feet, suggests that the US government knows a hell of a lot more that they're letting on to when it comes to these 2004 events, and possibly opens up the possibility as well that these things were actually coming from space. And when I asked Ronald Moultrie, the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, that question in December, he wouldn't comment in terms of any UAP potentially being tracked in the space domain, which I think is very, very telling.
And these other sightings, did they have the same flight pattern as the Tic Tac that the whistleblower testified about before lawmakers, that it stops midair and then takes off unexplained?
Yeah, I think the working assumption was that these are similar type craft. So what happened was the Princeton saw these things dropping down from 80,000 feet like snowflakes. They had to reset the radar system to make sure they weren't just seeing something which is a malfunction. And they kept on showing up. So basically, before an exercise was about to take place, the radar operator on board the Princeton was like, look, I can't send, we can't do exercises if we've got some unknown contacts out there. We need to see what they are. So that's when Commander Fravor was actually basically led towards the Tic Tac, which was just one of those objects. But there are a number of objects which was picked up by radar, which we could perhaps assume were similar objects with similar capabilities than the Tic Tac.
It's interesting. I'm anticipating this NASA development here in the next month or so, and what we learned from the latest report out of that organization. Christopher Sharp, thanks for your time on this. It's certainly caught a lot of folks' attention at the right time.
Thank you.